So far, we have visualized simple one-dimensional data. Now, what do I mean by one-dimensional data? What I mean is that we've looked at visualizing a dataset where each value is just a number, and there's no additional aspect to it. Let's take a look at that in the code. So here in the index.html file at line 12, this array called data just consists of numbers, integers. And all we need to do is grab the index, and then we have the number. Now, what I've done ahead of time is I've pasted a new data set called data at line 14. I've commented it out, that's why it's gray. And here we have objects for each index. So let me delete the old data so we don't get confused, and then uncomment this line. So I'll delete comment markers. Now, each piece of data within this array at lines 12 through 25 is an object. And we know that by looking at the curly brackets that surround the pieces of data. These objects all have shared properties, key being a property and value being a property. So key denotes a name of a particular type of donut, glazed, that is a string. Then value denotes some sort of value. Here it'll be quantity. So value is where we want to grab data in order to render our chart. In fact, if we save this and go back to the web page and refresh, we now see that our visualization is broken. And in the console at the bottom of the page, which I have open ahead of time, we get two errors: invalid value for the rect and text attributes. And you'll see this NaN in JavaScript. That means not a number. So the reason that's happening is because we're no longer accessing numeric data in our data set. Instead, we're accessing objects. So we need to change our code to work with these objects. Let's head to the code. In the index.html file, we want to first go down to the definition of our xScale function, because our xScale function is using the values to draw the bar widths. So here at line 36, I want to head to the domain part of this. So this is the xScale function. And then within domain, we're looking at defining the max of the domain as the value contained within the data array. Well, we can't just pass data because now it's objects. So the second argument of this function d3max will be an accessor function. This function will tell D3 this is how you access the particular information you need to determine the maximum value. So we'll type function, open and close parentheses, and open and close curly brackets. And we'll create a new line. We're creating an anonymous function, and the argument here will use the letter D. And that stands for the individual piece of data that we're currently looking at. And that individual piece of data is the object within the array. Take a look at the object, and the object has two properties, key and value. And what we need to do is return d.value. And we'll type a semicolon. Now don't put any punctuation outside of that parentheses. That parentheses belongs to the domain function. So we fixed the xScale function. Now we need to head into the plot function that we created for this particular chart. And we need to fix any references to x. So the first one here is the attribute x being set to 0. That's actually okay because we're starting at the left of the chart, and so 0 needs to be the value there. But we're also setting the width of the bar based off of the xScale. So let's take a look at the attribute width, and that's set using the xScale function. D refers to the individual piece of data bound to this particular item, and so we want d.value because we need the value property of the data that is bound. We need to look at the text portion, which is the bar label part of our function. We'll look for x again, x parentheses d, and just as you guessed it, d.value, because we need that numeric value to be passed into the scaling function. And then finally, the text itself is supposed to display a number. If we were to display this now, it would display the word object, and that's no good. So let's take a look at the text function, and we'll return d.value. Save it, head to the web page and refresh, and voila, our visualization is now fixed. You'll most likely be working with arrays of objects as you work with various data sources. We have these properties that have descriptive titles, so the key, for example, or it could be donut, or it could be any other thing, and then a value for that. And so consistently, I'll use key and value as the properties for these objects, but you can use whatever you want. Just know that you'll use dot notation and accessor functions to grab the data for that particular property.